250 quadrillion miles from the blinding radiation of the galactic center, a splinter of stellar gas and ancient dust arcs through the vacuum. Temperatures in this specific region fluctuate with extreme violence. Inside the dense, collapsing molecular clouds, the ambient heat drops to just a few degrees above absolute zero, creating a freezing dark where carbon and oxygen molecules bind in absolute silence just beyond the borders of these dark nebulas. The environment shifts abruptly. Vast cavities of thin, expanding plasma boil at over 1 million degrees, hollowed out by the shock waves of ancient detonated stars. This uneven, chaotic fracture of debris and radiation is currently slipping through the gravitational well of the Milky Way at over 500,000 miles per hour. We exist inside this structure. We call it the Orion Cygnus Arm. In the broader architecture of the galaxy, it is routinely classified as a minor feature, a mere bridge, a localized spur of gas caught between the heavy, dominating currents of the Sagittarius and Perseus spiral arms. On a standard map of the Milky Way, it registers as a faint afterthought, an insignificant smudge in a rotating disk spanning over 100,000 light-years. But flat maps are inherently deceitful. They compress the terrifying reality of three-dimensional volume into a comfortable, manageable image on a screen, completely erasing the suffocating distances involved. When you strip away the convenience of a map and calculate the raw physical space we actually occupy, the definition of minor quickly shatters. This so-called insignificant bridge is 10,000 light-years long and 3,500 light-years across. To cross it at the speed of our fastest current spacecraft would take over 150 million years. It holds thousands of giant molecular complexes, deep stellar nurseries shrouded in opaque dust, and billions of blazing thermonuclear engines. It is an ocean of matter so vast that the light from our own sun barely penetrates a fraction of its depth before fading into the background radiation. Yet, as our orbital observatories pierce deeper into the obscurant dust of this local neighborhood, a severe anomaly is emerging from the raw data. By meticulously tracking the high-velocity movement of young blue giants and mapping the exact geometry of star-forming regions within the Orion Arm, astrophysicists have detected something fundamentally wrong with our immediate surroundings. The architecture of our galactic arm does not behave the way a simple, cohesive bridge of gas should. Recent kinematic surveys reveal deep structural fractures. Massive splinters of dense matter are actively breaking away from the main structure, stretching out at radical, inexplicable angles. They are completely ignoring the established gravitational flow of the main galactic disk. There is a sheer tear in the fabric of our local space, a colossal rift spanning thousands of light-years, moving at a velocity entirely out of sync with the stars around it. The human brain is a highly specialized survival engine, aggressively optimized by millions of years of evolution to process immediate, local environments. We are fundamentally wired to understand the geometry of a savanna, the trajectory of a falling object, or the physical boundaries of a room. We are entirely unequipped to intuitively grasp the architecture of the cosmos. When you stand outside on a clear night and look up at the band of the Milky Way, your biological hardware betrays you. The optic nerve feeds the brain a compressed, flattened illusion. You perceive a static, two-dimensional tapestry of light, a dome of fixed points suspended in a peaceful void. This is not reality. It is a neurological coping mechanism. The sheer, overwhelming depth of the three-dimensional space before you is simply censored by your mind, preventing a continuous state of paralyzing cognitive overload. To break this illusion and map the true scale of our local galactic neighborhood is an act of violent rebellion against our own biology. It requires discarding everything that feels correct and relying entirely on the cold, unforgiving metrics of observational data. For centuries, the absolute greatest minds in observational astronomy were fundamentally blinded by their own location, attempting to map the shape of the Milky Way while embedded deeply inside its disk is structurally identical to trying to map the intricate layout of a sprawling, blackout-stricken metropolis. While locked inside a basement with a single frosted glass window, you can see the glow of distant streetlights. You can infer that traffic is moving, but the overall grid remains stubbornly invisible. The primary antagonist in this historical struggle was not a lack of mathematical prowess, but a physical barrier: interstellar dust. The vacuum of space within the galactic plane is not empty. It is choked with a microscopic smog of silicate grains, carbon soot, and frozen volatile molecules, all forged in the dying atmospheres of ancient stars. This dust acts as an impenetrable curtain. It aggressively scatters and absorbs optical light. A brilliant, massive star cluster, located just a few thousand light-years away on the other side of the Orion arm, is rendered completely invisible to the human eye. Its light blocked, diluted, and extinguished by the sheer volume of soot drifting between us and the source. For generations, this optical extinction created a catastrophic blind spot, leading early astronomers to severely miscalculate the size of the galaxy and our position within it. The breakthrough did not come from building larger glass lenses, but from abandoning human vision entirely. The true shape of the Orion arm began to materialize only when we learned to listen to the radiation of the invisible. The interstellar medium is predominantly composed of neutral hydrogen gas hanging silently in the freezing dark. In the realm of quantum mechanics, a peculiar and incredibly rare event occurs within these vast clouds. An electron bound to a cold hydrogen atom will spontaneously flip its magnetic spin to align with the proton at its core. This single microscopic shift releases a highly specific, faint pulse of radiation at a wavelength of exactly 21 centimeters. Statistically, for any single hydrogen atom, this spin-flip transition takes millions of years to occur. But because the Orion arm contains hundreds of millions of solar masses of hydrogen, the collective, continuous flipping of these countless electrons generates a roaring, persistent radio hum that slices effortlessly through the thickest clouds of interstellar dust. By constructing massive fields of radio telemetry dishes and tuning them specifically to this 21-centimeter wavelength, astrophysicists were finally able to bypass the visual blockade. They mapped the concentration of the gas, and more importantly, they analyzed the Doppler shift of the signal by measuring how the frequency of the radiation stretched or compressed They calculated the exact velocity of these invisible clouds, allowing them to mathematically plot the spiraling structure of the galaxy. However, locating the gas was only the first step. Understanding what a spiral arm actually is required dismantling another fundamental intuition. When you look at a photograph of a distant spiral galaxy, the sweeping, luminous arms appear as solid, physical structures, like the spokes of a wheel, rotating perfectly in unison. The mathematics of orbital mechanics prove this is an absolute impossibility. If the spiral arms were rigid structures of stars locked together, the inner regions of the galaxy, which rotate far faster than the outer edges, would wrap the arms into an impossibly tight, unrecognizable coil within a few million years. The galaxy would destroy its own shape. Instead, the equations of galactic dynamics reveal a far more hostile and dynamic environment. The Orion arm is not a physical object. It is a propagating shock wave. It is a massive, self-sustaining density wave ripping through the disk of the Milky Way, similar to the mechanics of a severe traffic jam on a crowded highway. The stars and the gas clouds are the cars. They move at their own orbital speeds, independently, circling the galactic center. As they enter the invisible boundary of the Orion arm, the local gravitational field intensifies. The stars and gas are violently decelerated, piling up in a high-density bottleneck. This localized compression has brutal consequences. The colossal clouds of dormant hydrogen gas are crushed together by the pressure of the density wave. They collapse under their own immense gravity, triggering a violent chain reaction of thermonuclear ignition. This is why the edges of the Orion arm are defined by the blinding, furious blue light of hypergiant stars. These massive entities live incredibly short, violent lives, detonating as supernovae and carving out those million-degree plasma cavities before they ever leave the boundary of the arm. The spiral arm is essentially a moving zone of creation and annihilation, a localized shock front that our own solar system is currently plunging through. For decades, the consensus was settled. The math worked. The radio maps indicated that we lived on a minor spur, an offshoot bridging the gap between the major density waves of the Perseus and Sagittarius arms. But the era of radio astronomy, while revolutionary, lacked the final surgical precision required to see the absolute truth of our immediate surroundings. Radio waves map the vast oceans of gas, but they do not track the precise movements of individual stellar bodies with enough resolution to detect microscopic local fractures. To achieve that, the observational methodology had to evolve into something almost frighteningly precise, operating 1,000,000 miles away from Earth. Suspended in the freezing vacuum at Lagrange Point 2, the European Space Agency's Gaia Observatory operates without emotion, sweeping the sky continuously with a billion-pixel camera cooled to -100 degrees Celsius. Gaia does not take pretty pictures. It is a machine designed purely for astrometry. It tracks the exact coordinates of over 1 billion stars, measuring their positions over and over again to calculate their parallax and proper motion. The mathematics driving Gaia's astrometric solutions are staggering. Instead of calculating distance through the raw brightness of a star, which is constantly skewed by intervening dust, Astrometry relies on the cold geometry of angles. As the Earth orbits the Sun, our vantage point shifts. By observing a target star from opposite sides of the solar system, Gaia measures the microscopic shift in the star's apparent position against the static, immovable backdrop of distant deep-field quasars. The angles involved are so unfathomably small that Gaia is effectively measuring the width of a human hair located hundreds of miles away. It requires continuously inverting massive matrices of data, filtering out the gravitational warping of light caused by the planets in our own solar system and compensating for the microscopic thermal expansion of the spacecraft's own mirrors. When the first massive data sets from Gaia were compiled, processed, and translated into a three-dimensional kinematic map of our local neighborhood, the established model of the Orion arm instantly collapsed. The data was undeniable. By tracking the exact trajectories and velocities of thousands of young, massive stars embedded deep within the local dust clouds, the algorithms revealed that the Orion structure is not a minor, passive spur. The pitch angle, the mathematical degree to which the arm winds away from the galactic center, was completely wrong. A minor spur should run somewhat parallel to the main arms. The data showed that the Orion structure is tearing through the galactic disk at a steep, aggressive angle. It is vastly larger, heavily fragmented, and violently active. We are not residing on a quiet bridge of gas. We are drifting through a massive, independent structural fracture that is actively splintering away from the main gravitational currents of the galaxy. And the more we map the exact velocity of these local star clusters, the more we realize that a colossal, unexplained force has recently ripped a massive void right through the center of our galactic neighborhood. We are floating in the aftermath of an ancient, unseen cataclysm, surrounded by dark masses and runaway stars that refuse to obey the established rules of the galactic disk. If you seek the truth in the dark, if you demand to understand the relentless mechanics of the void and uncover the reality of our place in the universe, subscribe and join us. We are mapping the fracture. The most disturbing aspect of the Gaia astrometric data is not just the size of the Orion arm or its aggressive angle through the Milky Way. It is the discovery of the localized distortion. When astrophysicists isolated the kinematics of the dense molecular clouds lying just above and below our solar system, they found an undulating, wave-like anomaly woven directly into the fabric of the arm itself. The structure is not flat, it is buckling. The discovery of this undulating distortion required a complete reinvention of how we perceive the vacuum. To map the true geometry of the Orion arm, astrophysicists had to stop looking at the blinding light of the stars and focus entirely on the shadows they cast. Every star in the galaxy acts as a perfectly calibrated thermonuclear beacon, broadcasting a highly specific spectrum of light based on its surface temperature and chemical composition. When that light travels through a pure vacuum, its signature remains pristine. But the space within our spiral arm is choked with microscopic, frozen debris. When stellar light encounters this interstellar soot, a ruthless physical filtering process begins. The dust grains drifting through the cold are precisely the right physical size to intercept shorter, high-energy wavelengths. Blue light is aggressively scattered into the void, deflected away from our telescopes, while red light, with its longer, more lethargic wavelength, bends and weaves through the microscopic debris, surviving the journey to our detectors. This phenomenon, known as interstellar reddening, is not a subtle visual artifact. It is a fundamental distortion of reality that can be measured and quantified with devastating precision by analyzing the light from hundreds of millions of stars simultaneously and mathematically calculating the exact ratio of the missing blue light compared to the surviving red light. Modern supercomputers can reverse engineer the physical environment. They calculate the exact density, volume, and three-dimensional coordinates of the invisible dust clouds standing between the observer and the source. The resulting data does not produce a flat map. It generates a volumetric, three-dimensional topography of the dark matter and gas surrounding our solar system. When this technique was applied to the dense molecular clouds of the Orion arm, the fragmented, buckling nature of our local space was finally exposed. The algorithms revealed a contiguous, unbroken structure of star-forming gas so massive it instantly shattered the existing models of the galactic neighborhood. Astronomers named it the Radcliffe Wave. It is a singular, interconnected filament of freezing dense matter stretching an incomprehensible 9,000 light-years long. It contains over 3 million times the mass of our sun in dormant gas and dust. But the terrifying aspect of the Radcliffe Wave is not its sheer mass. It is its behavior. The structure is entirely refusing to follow the flat, horizontal plane of the Milky Way. It is oscillating. It rises 500 light-years above the dense galactic disk, plunges directly through the center, and dives 500 light-years below it, forming a perfect, mathematically precise sinusoidal curve in the absolute zero of deep space. It resembles a colossal serpent made of crushed debris, slithering vertically through the flat plane of the galaxy. The physics dictating this movement are breathtakingly brutal. The structure is caught in a perpetual, slow-motion gravitational trap. The disk of the Milky Way is overwhelmingly dense, packed with billions of stars, black holes, and dark matter, creating a flattened plane with an immense, crushing gravitational pull. As the massive cold clouds of the Radcliffe Wave drift forward, this concentrated gravity inevitably pulls them downward, dragging the gas toward the center of the galactic plane. But in the frictionless vacuum of space, 3 million solar masses carry a terrifying amount of kinetic energy. The clouds do not simply stop when they reach the gravitational center. They violently plunge through the dense disk, their immense inertia carrying them hundreds of light-years out the other side into the empty, desolate halo below the galaxy. Only then, after plunging deep into the void, does the relentless gravity of the disk finally bleed away their momentum, forcing them to a halt. Slowly, agonizingly, the inexorable pull drags them back up again. The entire 9,000 light-year structure is caught in a perpetual bounce, a multi-million-year pendulum swinging endlessly through the heavy architecture of the Milky Way, fracturing the space around it as it moves. Our own solar system is entirely caught within this localized chaos. As this undulating wave of gas crashes through the galactic plane, it triggers a cascade of secondary, hyper-violent events. We are not observing this phenomenon from a safe, detached distance, we are navigating directly through the aftermath of its passage. To understand the immediate, localized danger of our position within the Orion Arm, you must examine the sheer emptiness of the space immediately surrounding the Earth. When astrophysicists mapped the distribution of gas within a 1,000 light-year radius of our Sun, they did not find the expected uniform fog of interstellar matter. They found a void, a massive, hollowed-out cavity spanning roughly 1,000 light-years across, entirely devoid of cold dust and neutral hydrogen. We refer to it as the local bubble. The vacuum within this bubble is not empty, it is boiling. While the dark nebulas of the Radcliffe Wave sit at a few degrees above absolute zero, the thin, almost imperceptible plasma filling our local cavity is superheated to over 1,000,000 degrees. The mathematics required to excavate a cavity of this magnitude through the dense matter of the galactic arm point to a single, terrifying mechanism, an extinction-level event of unimaginable scale. Roughly 15 million years ago, a dense cluster of young, hypermassive stars, born from the crushing pressure of the Orion Arm, burned through their nuclear fuel at a suicidal rate. These massive entities live incredibly brief, violent lives, their cores suddenly unable to sustain the outward pressure of thermonuclear fusion against the crushing, inward weight of their own immense gravity, collapsed in a fraction of a second. The resulting rebound triggered a chained sequence of catastrophic supernovae. These detonations unleashed a shock wave of thermal energy and hard radiation so intense it instantly flash-boiled the surrounding interstellar medium. The expanding shock front acted like a relentless cosmic snowplow, moving at a significant fraction of the speed of light. It obliterated everything in its path, violently sweeping up all the cold gas, dust, and debris, pushing it outward in a rapidly expanding sphere of destruction. The physics of this expansion dictate a merciless reality. As the blast wave pushed outward over millions of years, the volume of the expanding sphere increased drastically. To maintain its momentum, the shock wave had to sweep up an exponentially larger amount of dormant gas. The friction against the surrounding galaxy was absolute. Slowly, the kinetic energy of the dead stars began to dissipate into the void. The million-degree wall of the blast wave cooled, condensing into a dense, heavy shell of crushed hydrogen. And it is exactly here, within this compressed wall of debris bordering the void, that the gravity reasserted its dominance. The sheer pressure of the expanding shockwave forced the cold gas in the shell to collapse in on itself, igniting a vast new ring of stars along the perimeter of the bubble. We are not simply floating in an empty patch of space. Our Sun, completely by chance, has drifted directly into the center of this ancient, dormant explosion. We are silent passengers, traversing a million-degree graveyard of evaporated stars, entirely surrounded by a wall of high-density shrapnel that is actively giving birth to new suns. If you want to witness the raw, mechanical violence required to carve out these spaces, you do not have to look far. Just beyond the edge of our local bubble lies the engine of the Orion Arm itself. The Orion Molecular Cloud Complex. To the naked human eye, it registers as a faint, glowing smudge in the sword of the Orion constellation. But beneath the threshold of human vision, it is an active, raging blast zone, At the absolute heart of this nebula lies the trapezium cluster, a tightly packed group of newborn stars dominated by a monstrous entity designated Theta 1 Orionis C. This single star possesses 40 times the mass of our Sun, and its surface burns at a staggering 40,000 degrees. It does not simply emit light, it unleashes a continuous, devastating hurricane of extreme ultraviolet radiation. These high-energy photons carry so much momentum that they do not merely illuminate the surrounding gas, they act as a physical, destructive force. When this extreme radiation slams into the cold, dense walls of the surrounding molecular cloud, it forcibly strips the electrons from their hydrogen nuclei. The freezing gas is instantly ionized, flash heated from near absolute zero to 10,000 degrees, and violently blown backward into the void. This process, known as photoevaporation, operates like a slow-motion thermal weapon. It is actively melting the dense architecture of the nebula, carving a blistering cavern of glowing plasma deep into the dark dust. The edge of this cavern is defined by a towering, physical wall of boiling gas, an ionization front advancing relentlessly through the dark, annihilating the molecular structures that stand in its way. The environment within this hollowed-out cavern is entirely hostile to the creation of life. Within the blazing crossfire of the trapezium cluster, hundreds of smaller, younger stars are desperately attempting to form their own planetary systems. Orbiting these infant stars are flattened, rotating disks of dust and ice, the raw foundational materials required to build terrestrial worlds, moons, and perhaps oceans. Astronomers call them proplids, but in the Orion arm, they are born into an execution chamber. The unrelenting ultraviolet hurricane, radiating from the central giants, strikes these fragile, newborn disks with devastating precision. The hard radiation superheats the outer edges of the planetary material, boiling the primordial dust into a glowing envelope of gas that is then instantly blasted away by the heavy stellar winds. High-resolution telescopic data has captured the exact moments of this destruction. These doomed solar systems look like microscopic, burning comets, their tails of vaporized planetary material trailing into the dark, rapidly bleeding their mass into the void. The building blocks of these potential worlds are systematically sterilized, shredded, and blown apart before the dust can even begin to coalesce into rock. It is a stark mathematical certainty. The presence of a supermassive star guarantees the eradication of any nearby planetary system before it can even fully form. The Orion arm is not a peaceful, stellar nursery. It is a merciless furnace where the creation of the massive guarantees the annihilation of the small. Yet, as we meticulously map the expansion of these violent bubbles, the oscillation of the Radcliffe wave, and the brutal photoevaporation of the nebulas, a chilling discrepancy haunts the astrometric data. We have calculated the mass of the gas. We have tracked the velocity of the young stars. We have measured the kinetic energy of the supernovae shock waves. We have all the variables to understand the physical mechanics of our galactic neighborhood. But when we input these massive data sets into the supercomputers and run the simulations of the Orion arm, the physics break down. The mathematical models state unequivocally that the structure we are observing should not exist. The sheer kinetic force of the expanding bubbles combined with the chaotic, undulating motion of the wave and the aggressive shear of the galactic rotation, should have ripped the entire arm apart millions of years ago. The gas should have dissipated, the star-forming regions should have scattered into the dark. Something invisible, unthinkably powerful, and entirely outside the realm of standard thermodynamics is holding the violently fracturing pieces of our galactic neighborhood together. To reconcile the catastrophic physics of the Orion arm, to understand why this violently fracturing structure has not simply dissolved into the background vacuum of the Milky Way, we must observe an architecture that our biological senses are entirely incapable of perceiving. The space between the stars is not merely a passive theater where gas and dust happen to drift. It is bound by a structural skeleton. It is woven with a colossal, deep space magnetic network. If you pour wet concrete into a mold without an internal framework of steel rebar, the structure will inevitably crack and disintegrate under its own weight or the slightest external vibration. The massive, undulating gas clouds of the Radcliffe wave and the exploding margins of the local bubble are the concrete. They are constantly subjected to the devastating gravitational shear of the rotating galaxy, the shock waves of detonated suns, and their own massive kinetic momentum. Without an internal binding force, the math insists the Orion arm should have sheared apart tens of millions of years ago, scattering its star-forming nebulas into the empty galactic halo. The invisible steel rebar holding it all together against this relentless violence is the galactic magnetic field. But mapping a magnetic field across thousands of light years presents an almost insurmountable observational barrier. A magnetic field emits no light. It holds no heat. It casts no shadow. It is entirely silent. To prove its existence and map its geometry, astrophysicists had to rely on a microscopic, physical reaction happening in the freezing dark. The interstellar dust choking the Orion arm is not perfectly spherical. It is composed of jagged, asymmetrical splinters of carbon and silicates, microscopic shards forged in the cooling atmospheres of dying red giant stars. In the deep vacuum, these irregular splinters naturally spin, tumbling chaotically in the dark. However, when a massive magnetic field threads its way through the void, a subtle physical force is exerted on the metallic properties of the dust. Trillions upon trillions of these microscopic, jagged shards are forced to stop tumbling and align their long axes perfectly perpendicular to the invisible magnetic lines. They become an ocean of microscopic compass needles, all locking into the exact same orientation across hundreds of light years of empty space. When the background light of distant stars travels through these vast, aligned clouds, the physical geometry of the starlight is altered. The light waves oscillating parallel to the aligned dust grains are absorbed, while the waves oscillating in other directions slip through the gaps. The starlight that reaches our telescopes is physically flattened. It arrives entirely polarized. By launching observatories equipped with hypersensitive polarimeters, instruments supercooled to just a fraction of a degree above absolute zero to eliminate their own thermal noise, we have mapped this flattened starlight. The data forms a terrifyingly beautiful map of invisible tension. The magnetic fields of the Milky Way do do not merely drift passively through the Orion arm. They wrap around the dense gas clouds, strangling them, threading through the star-forming regions, and providing a sheer, tensile strength that resists the chaotic expansion of the supernovae bubbles. The magnetic pressure acts as a shock absorber for the entire galactic neighborhood, holding the fracturing pieces of the arm in a state of violent, suspended animation. Yet, this discovery only leads us into a far more profound and frustrating barrier. We have mapped the invisible skeleton. We have calculated the mass of the gas. We know the exact velocity of the stars hurtling through the local void. We have fed all of this perfect, hard-won astrometric data from our orbital observatories into the most powerful supercomputers ever constructed by human engineering. We attempt to fast-forward the clock, to simulate the future of our galactic neighborhood, and see where this localized fracture is taking us. And every single time, the mathematics spectacularly and inevitably fail. We crash directly into the absolute limit of human computation. We hit the wall of the n-body problem. In classical physics, if you have two massive objects in a vacuum, a star and a single planet, the gravitational mathematics are perfect. You can calculate their orbital mechanics with flawless, clockwork precision, predicting their exact positions billions of years into the past or the future. The equations are clean, elegant, and entirely solvable. But the moment you introduce a third object into that gravitational dance, the pristine math shatters. The gravitational tugs become chaotic, creating infinite, overlapping feedback loops where every object constantly alters the trajectory of the other two. Now, take that mathematical impossibility and scale it up to the billions of individual stars, black holes, and massive gas clouds residing within the Orion arm. Every single entity is continuously exerting a gravitational pull on every other entity simultaneously. When our supercomputers attempt to simulate the future of the Orion structure, they must calculate the gravitational influence of billions of objects updating every fraction of a second. Even running at quadrillions of calculations per second, the machines cannot process the infinite complexity of reality. They must rely on tiny approximations. They must round the numbers. But the mechanics of the galaxy are deeply unforgiving to approximation. A microscopic rounding error in the 15th decimal place of a simulation representing a mass discrepancy no larger than a dead asteroid will inevitably cascade over a simulated span of just a few million years. That microscopic error amplifies exponentially. The gravitational feedback loops warp, the predicted orbits diverge, and the entire simulated model of the Orion arm dissolves into absolute, unpredictable chaos. Astrophysicists refer to this hard mathematical barrier as the Lyapunov horizon. It is not a limit of our technology. It is a fundamental property of chaotic systems. Beyond this exact mathematical line, the future behavior of the star clusters and the gas clouds in our local arm becomes physically unknowable. The timeline is erased by the sheer friction of chaotic gravity. We cannot rewind the clock perfectly to see exactly how the arm fractured, and we cannot fast forward it to see how it will tear apart. We are structurally trapped in the present, mathematically blind to the deep future of the cosmic machinery surrounding us. But while the deep future remains shielded by the chaos of gravity, our immediate physical trajectory through this splintering arm is a harsh, measurable certainty, and the data dictates that the environment of our solar system is about to drastically, violently change. We are currently drifting through the million-degree, hollowed-out vacuum of the local bubble at over 500,000 miles per hour. Because this ancient blast zone is nearly devoid of dense gas, our sun enjoys a period of unprecedented calm. Our star is not a static ball of fire. It breathes. It continuously exhales a furious, invisible hurricane of charged plasma known as the solar wind. This wind expands outward in every direction at 1,000,000 miles per hour, carving out a colossal, protective bubble around our planetary system. This is the heliosphere. It acts as a physical, electromagnetic hull. As our solar system plows through the galaxy, the heliosphere deflects the heavy, high-energy cosmic rays and interstellar dust that constantly rain down from the detonated stars of the Orion arm. Right now, because we are floating in the empty, low-pressure void of the local bubble, our heliospheric shield is massively inflated, extending far beyond the orbit of Pluto, keeping the inner solar system entirely isolated from the raw interstellar medium. But the local bubble has an edge, and we are moving directly toward it. Just beyond the invisible boundary of our current void lies the heavy, freezing, compressed wall of the Radcliffe Wave. It is a dense, violent storm front of interstellar soot and molecular gas. The astrometric data is absolute. Our solar system is steering on a direct collision course with this dense cloud. When we finally cross the boundary and plunge into that thick molecular wall, the friction will be absolute. The heavy, freezing gas of the Orion arm will crash against the expanding solar wind. The mathematics of fluid dynamics dictate a terrifying outcome. The sheer pressure of the dense interstellar medium will forcibly overpower our sun's magnetic exhalation. Our protective heliosphere will be violently compressed. The shield will shrink, collapsing inward, pushed back past the icy rocks of the Kuiper Belt, past the gas giants, potentially shrinking all the way down to the orbit of the Earth itself. If the heliosphere collapses behind us, the inner solar system will be instantly exposed to the deep ocean of the galaxy. The Earth will be directly flooded with raw, unfiltered, galactic, cosmic radiation. These cosmic rays are not beams of light. They are physical shrapnel. They are the bare, stripped nuclei of heavy atoms, accelerated to 99% the speed of light by the shock waves of ancient supernovae. When this microscopic shrapnel bypasses a collapsed heliosphere and slams into the upper atmosphere of the Earth, it physically shatters the nitrogen and oxygen atoms in the air, creating a cascading shower of secondary radiation that bleeds all the way down to the surface of the planet. This scenario is not a theoretical model, it is a cyclical, geological reality. We have sailed through the dense, radioactive storms of the Orion arm before, and the scars of those journeys are buried deep within our own planet. In an effort to understand our historical path through the galaxy, oceanographers have drilled deep into the abyssal plains of the Pacific Ocean, extracting cores of ancient, undisturbed geological sediment. Hidden inside these cores, buried beneath millions of years of crushed rock and water, scientists discovered a ghost. They isolated a highly specific radioactive isotope known as iron-60. The presence of iron-60 on Earth is a smoking gun of galactic violence. This isotope does not occur naturally in the slow geological processes of our planet. It cannot be forged by standard volcanism or chemical reactions. The mathematics of nuclear physics prove that iron-60 is strictly manufactured in the unimaginable, crushing heat of a collapsing hypergiant star, just seconds before it detonates into a supernova. Finding thousands of these alien atoms resting silently at the bottom of our oceans means only one thing. Roughly 2 to 3 million years ago, the protective magnetic bubble of our sun was crushed. Our solar system drifted too close to the dense active edge of a star-forming cloud in the Orion arm. A massive star detonated in our absolute vicinity, and the radioactive shrapnel of its destroyed core rained directly down onto the unprotected oceans of Earth, slowly sinking into the dark to be buried by time. We are not separated from the violent mechanics of the Orion arm. The extreme physics happening out in the freezing dark are slowly, inevitably altering the chemical composition of the dirt beneath our feet. And as we continue to measure the undulating drift of the dense gas clouds ahead of us, the silent math of the void confirms that we are merely waiting to cross the threshold once again. When that threshold is finally crossed, and the protective magnetic shield of our sun is forcefully collapsed by the dense, freezing wall of the advancing molecular cloud, the consequences for the Earth will not be immediately visible to the naked eye. There will be no cinematic explosion in the sky. The transition will be entirely silent, but it will fundamentally rewrite the chemistry of our atmosphere. To understand the sheer scale of this consequence, you must look at the exact mechanics of a cosmic ray bombardment. These high-energy particles, stripped protons and heavy atomic nuclei, are currently being held at bay by the outer edges of our heliosphere. But when that barrier falls, they will flood the inner solar system. As they approach Earth, they will slam into the upper stratosphere at 99% the speed of light. The kinetic energy contained within a single microscopic atomic nucleus traveling at this velocity is staggering. When it collides with a stationary nitrogen or oxygen molecule in our atmosphere, the impact physically shatters the atom. This collision triggers a catastrophic subatomic chain reaction, generating a cascading shower of secondary particles, pions, muons, and high-energy neutrons that spray downward toward the surface of the planet. Right now, in the safety of our local bubble, a mild, constant drizzle of these secondary particles passes completely unnoticed through our bodies every second. But when we plunge into the dense debris of the Orion arm, that drizzle becomes a relentless, torrential flood of hard radiation. The immediate danger of this bombardment is not necessarily biological mutation, but atmospheric engineering. The Earth's climate is not merely an isolated system dictated by the heat of the sun and the rotation of the oceans. It is intimately wired to the physics of the broader galaxy. As this intense flood of cosmic shrapnel continuously shreds the molecules in our lower atmosphere, it leaves behind a massive trail of electrically charged ions. These floating ions act as microscopic magnets for water vapor. They serve as perfect, highly efficient seeds for the rapid condensation of dense, low-altitude clouds. The astrophysical mathematics suggest a chilling undeniable correlation. As the Earth traverses the heavy, radioactive storm fronts of a galactic arm, global cloud cover radically increases. A thick, unbroken blanket of white reflects the heat of the sun directly back into the freezing void, aggressively dropping the global temperature. We are violently plunged into deep, enduring ice ages. The deep geological records hidden within the Earth's crust confirm this cyclical nightmare. If you track the timeline of the most severe glacial epochs and mass extinction events over the last 500 million years, they do not occur at random. They align with terrifying mathematical precision to the exact moments our solar system physically plunged through the densest, most violently active regions of the Milky Way's spiral arms. Our planet's long-term climate is not a local weather pattern. It is a direct consequence of galactic geography. We are entirely at the mercy of the cosmic weather. This realization exposes a profound, terrifying blind spot in the human psyche. We suffer from a severe temporal illusion. Everything we consider to be the human experience, the dawn of agriculture, the construction of the pyramids, the rise and fall of every empire, the Industrial Revolution, and our first fragile steps into the vacuum of space, has occurred within a microscopic fraction of geological time known as the Holocene. This 10,000-year window of perfectly stable, predictable, and warm climate is not the default state of our planet. It is an extreme, highly unusual anomaly. Humanity has only been able to flourish because, purely by chance, our entire recorded history has unfolded while our solar system was drifting safely through the most vacant, dead, and quiet center of the million-degree local bubble. We have built our entire understanding of reality inside a temporary, localized sanctuary. We look up at a calm, static night sky and arrogantly assume the universe is a peaceful, unchanging theater. We mistake a momentary pause in the wind for a permanent state of reality. But the Gaia astrometric data ruthlessly destroys this illusion of permanence. The architecture of the Orion arm is entirely fluid, and the night sky you see tonight is nothing more than a momentary, localized arrangement of shrapnel. Because we map the stars into recognizable constellations like Orion, the Big Dipper, and Cassiopeia, the human brain instinctively groups them together, assuming they are a physical family of stars traveling in unison. This is a complete fabrication of perspective. The stars in our immediate neighborhood are entirely disconnected from one another. They are not a cohesive fleet. They are individual debris moving at vastly different velocities and radical vectors. Our sun is currently hurtling through the galactic void at roughly 450,000 miles per hour. But the star Sirius, the brightest point of light in our night sky, is moving on a completely different trajectory. Alpha Centauri, our closest stellar neighbor, is plunging toward us right now, but in a mere 28,000 years, a blink of an eye in cosmic time, it will reach its closest approach before drifting away forever into the deep void, never to return. The stars we navigate by, the ancient lights that have guided human sailors for millennia, are merely strangers passing each other in a dark, endless expanse. If you were to accelerate the timeline and watch the night sky over the next few million years, the familiar constellations would violently tear themselves apart, The bright blue hypergiants of the Orion arm will rapidly burn through their fuel and detonate, vanishing from the sky entirely, replaced by expanding, invisible shock waves. The dense molecular clouds of the Radcliffe wave will slither further through the galactic plane, plunging into the dark halo below. Our current neighborhood will completely dissolve, scattered to the freezing winds of the Milky Way's rotation. Our sun will drift completely alone into a new, uncharted region of the galaxy, surrounded by an entirely alien configuration of distant suns. There is no permanent geography. There is no home. We are solitary nomads, adrift in a disintegrating architecture. Yet, even as we mathematically model this continuous disintegration, as we track the chaotic drift of billions of stars and the violent expansion of the supernova bubbles, we arrive at the most deeply unsettling consequence of modern astrophysics. We have mapped the mass of the gas. We have tracked the radiation. We have proven the existence of the invisible magnetic skeleton, holding the fracturing Orion arm together against its own explosive kinetic energy. But when you total the mass of every single star, every planet, every asteroid, and every microscopic grain of dust within the Milky Way, it accounts for a pitiful, almost insulting fraction of the gravity required to actually hold the galaxy together. If the visible matter, the things that emit light, heat, or radio waves, was all that existed, the rotational velocity of the Milky Way would have completely shredded the galaxy billions of years ago. The outer edges of the disk, including the Orion arm, are spinning far too fast. The math dictates that the centrifugal force should be violently flinging the stars out into the absolute zero of intergalactic space, but they remain anchored. They are gripped by an unseen, overwhelmingly massive leviathan. The brutal reality is that 85% of the mass in our local universe is completely invisible, untouchable, and entirely disconnected from the electromagnetic spectrum. It is dark matter. It does not reflect light. It does not block light. It does not interact with the dense hydrogen clouds, and it does not feel the million-degree heat of the exploding stars. It is an absolute ghost, yet its gravitational authority is absolute. We are forced to accept a deeply humiliating consequence regarding our place in the cosmos. The magnificent, violent architecture of the Orion arm, the blazing hypergiant stars, the vast undulating waves of molecular gas, the magnetic fields, and our own fragile, life-bearing solar system is not the main structure of the galaxy. The visible universe is nothing more than a superficial, glowing frost. It is a thin layer of bioluminescent foam riding on the crest of a dark, invisible ocean. The true Milky Way is a colossal, spherical halo of dead, unseeable mass, completely indifferent to the light and heat generated within it. The fractures we see in our local arm, the violent oscillations of the Radcliffe wave, the strange, inexplicable, kinematic trajectories of the star clusters pulling away from the galactic plane. These are not localized accidents. They are being dragged, steered, and manipulated by the crushing gravitational undertow of this invisible ocean. We are studying the ripples on the surface, utterly blind to the monstrous machinery operating in the depths. We are plunging forward at 500,000 miles per hour, locked in a decaying orbit, bound to a collapsing spur of gas, being pulled into the dark by forces we can neither touch nor comprehend. To truly comprehend the Orion Arm is to witness the systematic dismantling of human consequence. For centuries, we have looked up at the night sky and constructed elaborate mythologies to place ourselves at the center of the cosmic narrative. We drew lines between the stars, named them after our gods, and convinced ourselves that the universe was a grand, theatrical backdrop designed specifically for our existence. The astrometric data ruthlessly correct this arrogance. We are not the center. We are not the observers of a static, peaceful void. We are biological passengers, trapped inside a microscopic planetary atmosphere, orbiting a remarkably average star, adrift within a violently fracturing splinter of gas that is actively being torn apart by the gravitational undertow of an invisible ocean. The true scale of our local neighborhood is a mathematical testament to our absolute irrelevance. Every human triumph, every tragedy, every monument we have ever built, and every war we have ever fought has occurred within the temporary, anomalous silence of a hollowed-out, radioactive blast zone. We are entirely defined by the boundaries of the local bubble. And as the orbital mechanics of the Milky Way drag us forward, that sanctuary will inevitably collapse. The dense, freezing walls of the Radcliffe wave will eventually consume this space, crushing our sun's magnetic shield and exposing whatever remains of our world to the raw, unfiltered violence of the interstellar medium. The Earth will endure, but its chemistry will be fundamentally rewritten by the cold mechanics of the void, just as it has been a dozen times before in the deep geological past. There is a profound, terrifying liberation in this realization. The universe does not harbor malice toward us, nor does it offer any protection. It is simply a machine of unimaginable scale, operating on mathematical principles that do not factor in the survival of biological life. The hypergiant stars of the trapezium cluster do not care that their radiation is sterilizing the birthplaces of future worlds. The dark matter halo gripping our galaxy does not care that its immense gravity is steering us toward a dense molecular storm front. The void is entirely, perfectly indifferent. Consider the sheer futility of our attempts to leave a permanent mark. We launch probes into the dark, carrying records etched with our coordinates, hoping to announce our presence. But at the maximum velocity of our fastest machines, it will take tens of thousands of years just to breach the nearest empty gulfs of our local neighborhood. Long before our primitive technology crosses the distances required to leave the local bubble, the geometry of the Orion Arm will have already shifted. The stars we mapped will have drifted away. Our radio transmissions, racing outward at the speed of light, are nothing but a microscopic, localized whisper, instantly swallowed by the roaring radio hum of the collapsing hydrogen clouds and the deafening radiation of dying suns. When you step outside tonight and look up at the faint, glowing band of the Milky Way, you are not looking at a permanent home. You are looking at a snapshot of a slow-motion cataclysm. You are observing the fading shrapnel of ancient supernovae, the buckling ridges of freezing gas, and the silent, invisible skeleton of magnetic fields holding the entire chaotic fracture together. It is a dying architecture, burning itself out in the freezing dark, drifting endlessly through a universe that will not register its passing. We are here, briefly, in the quiet eye of the storm, awake just long enough to measure the walls of our own destruction and to understand with devastating clarity the absolute silence that awaits us.